Hi, this is Travis Shaw with the Mosby Heritage Area, joined with Joe Rizzo from the Loudon Museum, and we are continuing our exploration of sites in downtown Leesburg. We are here again at Harrison Hall. Again, in case you missed it the first time, this is a private home. We have permission to be here today, so please don't come up to the porch like we are, but you can see the Civil War Trail sign down on the sidewalk. So when we left off, we were talking about what happened here in 1861. We're going to pick up in the fall of 1862. It's early September. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia are fresh off of their victory at Second Manassas, and Lee is contemplating his first offensive invasion of the North. And so he has come here to Leesburg. The Army is here in Leesburg. There are troop encampments surrounding the town. And Lee is going to, this is going to set the stage for one of the more important meetings of the 1862 campaign. Tell us a little bit about that, Joe.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned Second Manassas, and this has been a very bloody summer and a very change of fortunes for both armies. From the late spring, early summer during the Peninsula campaign, up through Second Manassas and now Antietam. And for Robert E. Lee, he was a relative unknown in the spring of 1862, but it's these string of victories that have given him almost quickly an iconic status. So when he's coming up through Loudon now into Leesburg from the Manassas area, residents are coming out to greet him and greet the soldiers. They haven't seen the Army of Northern Virginia in this size yet. This is a much larger army that was here for the Battle of Ball's Bluff. And for Robert E. Lee, he's got some big ideas for what this campaign can be. For one, though, it's worth noting his army is in shambles. While they've got a high morale because of these victories, from a supply, food, uniform, shoes standpoint, they're struggling. And they're also struggling with recruitment as well. So it's a small, beat-up army that has a lot of excitement, though, behind them. And one thing he is hoping he can do is go into Maryland, change the political fortunes of how Maryland views the war, maybe turn the tide of Northern civilians from supporting the war to saying it's not worth fighting anymore, and maybe getting some of those supplies that his army needs. What brings him to Harrison Hall is probably because it is a beautiful home in downtown Leesburg, just a block away from the heart of the downtown area. And for Robert E. Lee, when he arrives here, while he's greeted by civilians, probably not the look that they thought he was going to have. He is not riding up on his horse Traveler. A few days prior, he had been thrown from Traveler, and he actually broke one of his wrists and sprained the other. He's not letting them stop him, though, from foregoing with this campaign. And he meets here at Harrison Hall with James Longstreet, Thomas Jonathan Jackson, and Jeb Stuart, and Lewis Armistead. And they meet here to plan out the military, tactical, I should say, strategies, really, both politically and militarily, about how they're going to go forward with their first large-scale invasion. And where they're going to cross is not too far away from here, just a little bit northward at White's Ferry. Now, a lot of this hinges on how Maryland reacts to what they would see as a liberation rather than a raid. But how does Maryland react to them leaving Harrison Hall and then heading up?
So, really good point. You know, again, Lee, Jefferson Davis, the Confederate High Command is extremely optimistic that once they enter Maryland again, that, like you said, they are going to be greeted as liberators. Now, what they find when those Confederate troops start crossing the Potomac there at White's Ferry is not quite the enthusiasm that they expected. You know, Maryland is a very deeply divided state. You know, there are places in Maryland that are very sympathetic to the Southern cause, particularly Southern Maryland, where slavery is very commonplace. There's a lot of cultural connections to Virginia. But when they invade Maryland, they're invading into the more western parts of the state. Now, they will find some individuals who support them in the area right around where they cross in northern Montgomery County, but as they move north towards the city of Frederick, Frederick is really a stronghold of Unionist sentiment. And, you know, by one firsthand account that's written down in Frederick, only about 50 or so men from that area join Lee's army. So it's not the manpower that he's expecting. What they will find, though, are the supplies that you mentioned they were lacking. They're going to find shoes. They're going to find a lot of foodstuffs. You know, this part of the country, Maryland, has not been touched by the hard hand of war yet. So they are going to be getting there and getting a lot of the foodstuffs and other supplies that they need. Now, of course, as we all know, the campaign does not turn out exactly as Lee and Jackson and Longstreet had planned here at Harrison Hall. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, well, there's a reason why there's a Civil War Trails marker on the sidewalk. And again, it's private property, but you can still access the Civil War Trails marker. If you're going to go in downtown Leesburg and hit some of the key Civil War landmarks, this is absolutely one of them. You don't see too many times where Longstreet, Lee, Jackson, Stewart are together. And it doesn't go, as you mentioned, the way they planned, but the morale of the Army is still pretty high after this point. Robert E. Lee will continue to get back on Traveler, back on the saddle, recover from that, and he'll continue to look for ways in which to get those objectives that brought him here the first time. Those don't leave him, and he's still going to try to find ways to take the war to the north, I would say more politically than anything, to try to turn the tide of northern civilians.
All right, well, thank you, Joe. We're going to... okay. We're going to continue this tour as we explore some of the sites in Leesburg that you can visit either from your couch or at home, the comfort of your home, or if you're able to get out and enjoy the fresh air, we encourage you to do so in a safe way.